Here is Erica.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you. Shoot. Don't stand now. Oh, man. I feel like I'm graduating. Jeez. I want to acknowledge the stolen land where we stand. Pennacook, Wabanaki, and Abenaki lands. And we don't just acknowledge stolen ground for the sake of acknowledging it. If I stole that camera right there and then posted it on Facebook that I stole it, you'd probably be like, okay, are you gonna give it back? So we acknowledge it as a way to say that if Hampshire College wanted to build more schools or build more buildings, or if its sibling schools wanted to do the same, they would actually ask the folks who own the land first, if they could. And not use manipulative measures to take it anyway. I also want to recognize the Black people who have been pushed out of Amherst, Massachusetts. One of Massachusetts' biggest namesakes is chattel slavery and racism. Hampshire College is 66% white and 5% Black. Amherst, Massachusetts is 73% white. We have normalized areas and institutions that are majority white without considering how that came to be. The analysis is oftentimes left up to the folks who notice it most or are reminded of it daily by white people. I'm still unclear how Hampshire College costs $65,000 a year and is in danger of closing, but what I do know, I'm not a student, I can go off. Are y'all ready? But what I do know is this arbitrary price for a school is just another way to keep Black students out. With that said, thank you and congratulations to the folks who have been paying that tuition for the past 4 years or more, the students. Thank you to the faculty and academic staff. Thank you to the facilities and ground staff, the landscaping, custodial, food service, maintenance staff. Who aren't recognized enough, aren't paid enough, and when multi-million-dollar institutions face periods of austerity are often the first to lose their jobs. Many of whom look very different than the presidents, past and interim, the board of trustees, even the students. The college would be inoperable without you, as you do thankless, critical labor that supports the folks' hard work at re-envisioning a brand new radical Hampshire that may not include your interests at all. Thank you for inviting me to speak at such a joyous occasion. An oftentimes complex experience, college graduations really illustrate that meme where the little figure is standing in the room and there's fire all around them. The fire is the United States, and you sitting here today are the figure. This is a massive honor to affirm, hopefully echo what so many of you have been screaming for the past 4 or more years, and to leave you with some ease as you move to your next journey. Now, let's get a little familiar with each other. Make some noise if you are a procrastinator. Good. Make some noise if you freak out about assignment due dates and then spend exorbitant amounts of time on social media. Just checking. Make some noise if you are a part of any activism on campus. Make some noise if you weren't a part of any activism on campus. Good. It's good to be honest. Make some noise if you are active at the bar. Oh, just me? Okay, all right. Just me, that's fine, that's fine. If you're unfamiliar with who I am, I know that there was an elaborate introduction, but I'll say who I am one more time, Audre Lorde style. My name is Erica Hart, she, they pronouns. I am Black, descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, queer, non-binary femme, breast cancer survivor, sexuality educator, Sagittarius, and plant parent. My moon is in Scorpio, my rising is in Aquarius. Explains the outfit. Now, I know when people see a Black speaker, they have a myriad of thoughts come up considering the anti-Black society we are all brought up in. Oh yeah, they're gonna be so powerful. Insert some African-American vernacular that you know you ain't supposed to be saying unless you're Black. Or she's only up there because she is Black and they needed to fulfill some sort of diversity quota to appear woke. Or because I said I am a breast cancer survivor, this is gonna be so inspiring. Well, I get that we have been all conditioned to hear Black pain porn as the gateway to Black excellence. That won't be this speech. And people living with chronic illnesses and disabilities do not solely exist to inspire you, so that will also not be this speech. An aspect of my preparation when I speak is to hear what's happening at the school or the institution, so it can inform my work. And at every single predominantly white institution, it's the same song. Students are protesting, Black faculty have quit and/or are emotionally exhausted, and Black and people of color students are being harmed. I ask every school, hopeful to hear a different response, and that's never the case. I think my hope is lodged in this lie that college is a liberal escape from the world. And when I'm hearing about the school, and this was no different from Hampshire, a liberal arts school, I am reminded of how little liberal means, as our president is actually from a place people call liberal, a place where high school students who are preparing to be in your seat are navigating the most segregated school system in the country, New York City. It seems our hope may be firmly placed in how things appear to be rather than how they actually are. One day we will do more than just acknowledge that most collegiate institutions were founded on slave labor and stolen land, and that history only gets replicated in the school's design, while the administration continues to benefit off the very reason it came into existence. If you are sitting here today frustrated by how much labor, physical, emotional, spiritual, you have had to give to an institution you have paid money to attend, I affirm that frustration, and that does not discount all that you have done. Also in my preparation, I considered sharing with all of you the detailed version of my 5-year college experience as a B-ish, C-cusp student, where I spent most of my time following my boyfriend around his college campus as I attended community college nearby, then partying and/or sunbathing on the beaches of South Beach, Miami, exploring my body through the hands of someone else, hoping that now that I came out as queer, I would have a partner, because that would make it real, right? While I finished my bachelor's at the University of Miami. But I figured what might make the most difference is to hear how I felt when I graduated from undergrad. And I was stressed. Raise your hand if you feel similar. Just make it short. The most pressing question that plagued my mind, what the hell am I going to do next? A capitalist-induced anxiety that I thought was normal. Turn to someone and say, capitalist-induced anxiety. One more time, capitalist-induced anxiety. Good. I was raised in Baptist churches, so be forewarned that we will be doing call and response this whole time. And I want to make sure that you hear me. So we are groomed to this structure by the time that we can walk and form words. We go from kindergarten to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to undergrad for some of us, and there is never a break in between. If you fail a class or are held behind or can't afford undergrad or choose not to go, you are considered a failure. You have to squeeze your rest over winter and summer breaks that never make up for the amount of work you have done for 9 months out of the year. You study information that you digest for a short time just to regurgitate onto a test and forget later. I remember the term Pythagorean theorem, but if I were asked to do an equation, I would fail. Then you choose to go to an undergrad program that has no letter grades, and it's the same glorification of work, just without the letter grade. And now, here we are at the step that has no clear path. It's where white supremacist capitalism expects you to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, says that you have fulfilled on all things necessary to get a job, have a nuclear family with a picket fence in the suburbs, and if you fail, it's all your fault, not the faulty system. The answer to my what's next is the answer to many queer people who want to travel for free under the guise of saving the world. I thought somebody would guess. The Peace Corps. The Peace Corps was a year-long application, a roadblock to taking to Facebook to announce what was next the day after the graduation high settled. I didn't time out my application so I would be receiving an acceptance letter right after graduation. So I had 9 months left of waiting for a response. Instead of taking this as a sign to maybe go home and rest for the summer, I went to the plethora of job fairs that were held on campus, as educational institutions take it upon themselves to find all ways to claim your success. I came dressed in a suit, swiftly following the dress code guidelines. Your hair should be pulled back, skirts should go below the knee. Suit jackets, I wanted it to be the other way. Suit jackets over button-down shirts, and light makeup. I didn't know at the time that professionalism is just an anti-Black, anti-poor structure to justify and maintain employment racism. I had copies of my resume in a fancy leather folder that I bought from Staples the night before that likely still had the price tag sticker attached. A leather folder to hold papers. Why? But here I was, walking around frantic like all the other seniors, freaking out with the same question at heart. I handed my resume to every booth, but what I had my heart set on was working on a cruise ship. How cool would it be to travel for free and be on the water? I get to essentially be near my family in Puerto Rico. My major was psychology with a minor in theater, so the trepidation was also there, as the other question that follows, what's next, is this job really in my field? Absolutely not. But when I was offered to work on a cruise ship, I was ecstatic. When I found out it would be in Alaska and Canada, I was less excited. My first job out of college, I finally had something to show for my degree, sort of. When I arrived, I was greeted by my new boss, an Australian woman who loves soccer and gluten-free beers. She had been working on cruise ships for the past 4 years, so she knew her way around. I was going to be working as an activity specialist in the teen fun zone. It never occurred to me that I had dressed up, bought that leather paper holder, all to be wearing a polo shirt, shorts, and sneakers with smelly, puberty-stricken teens. I was given a tour around the ship where my Australian boss told me that when I see the captain, I need to salute him. This was the first moment in a working environment where I told the boss, I won't be doing that. I called my dad later that night, and he reinforced that I just had to do what the boss said. Cruise ships operate on a hierarchy. Captain is the top, and restaurant servers are the bottom. The living quarters are organized in this way as well. Think Titanic. I was repulsed by this. I watched the captain eat filet mignon while the janitorial staff ate a completely different, less expensive meal. I have always been someone who spoke up and pushed back on what people presumed was just the way things should be. I think most Black people are conditioned to be activists non-consensually. I had also become very familiar with speaking up as a Black person and how that leaves you vulnerable and oftentimes at risk for losing a job or being kicked out of school. But if I wasn't screaming, don't forget to use condoms, teens, pretending to be Jack looking for a Black femme rose, or have meetings with my boss to interrupt the status quo of cruise ship life. Cruise ships have people for them, working for them all over the world. They get away with paying people from the Philippines, for example, the living wage in the Philippines, as opposed to the US, because when you work on the water, it's considered international waters. So I was getting paid more than my Brazilian colleagues doing the same job. When I confronted my boss about this, she hit me with the same apathetic thoughts. That's just the way it is. I continued to speak out anyway. I went on a hiking trip with another colleague on one of my days off. She was a white person from South Africa. And on the trip back, I asked her what it was like living in apartheid South Africa. And she told me, without blinking, the black people in South Africa smell bad. It's not like the black people in the US. She asked me what was wrong after I looked at her for about 5 minutes in utter shock. Needless to say, we never spoke again. And as my time on the cruise ship was coming to an end, I was emotionally exhausted and back to the same question. Now what? I had 3 months left before I heard back from the Peace Corps, and I couldn't just go home and rest. I needed to do what? Find a job. Yep. I came to Maryland and began applying to jobs everywhere. But this time, I just used the internet. I left the leather folder at home. When I accepted a job as a hostess at P.F. Chang's, I thought, this should be a fairly easy job and perhaps a break from racism, and I was sadly mistaken. During my first week, a server came up to the host stand and said, "Black people never tip." It was almost as if this white person forgot that I was black. I told the manager, and they did nothing but send an email that watered down this harmful rhetoric and said, "We will not tolerate hatred here." After all, what server do you know reads emails? When I was from work, I get servers read emails, so I'm talking about an email from work, yeah. When I was accepted to the Peace Corps, I thought for sure living in Ethiopia as an HIV/AIDS volunteer from the United States, where I assumed I would be greeted with open arms in a place where my ancestors were stolen from, would certainly be free from systems of oppression. Until, of course, you figure out that the Peace Corps isn't helping anyone. It's a sneaky way for the US to further colonize countries. After proposing workshops on safety precautions for queer volunteers in a country where being queer is illegal, and a workshop on being black in the Peace Corps, a community-wide theater project on HIV/AIDS awareness, I traveled illegally to the part of the country that was off limits, like every single Peace Corps volunteer did before me. And it just so happened the Peace Corps office found out about it, investigated the rumor, and made sure I was kicked out with 6 months left in my service. You see, when people talk about privilege, they sometimes leave out that breaking the rules and getting away with it is also a privilege. Coming home early was devastating. There was no welcome sign. I was greeted by my dad's disappointed face and the question that I had been asking myself for years, now what? Peace Corps estimates that it takes a year to readjust to the US after returning home. I ignored whatever they suggested as I didn't feel like I deserved it and doubled down on the job search. I'd eventually work for an English as a second language school that I would have to call out for their racism until I was pushed out for doing so. Fast forward to the past 10 years as a sex educator, where I navigated the nonprofit industrial complex, thinking that it was a radical space that intended to support communities, when in actuality, it is just another space designed to silence the most radical. I worked full-time while on chemotherapy, sleeping in classrooms on breaks due to fatigue, forcing myself to push through rather than go home and rest. Today, as a freelancer, I have to be told to rest and not work. Ebony, my manager and my sweetheart, gives me the side eye for not resting at least once a week. So my point of giving you the shorter version in my CV in my very highlighter outfit is for a few reasons. One, it's important that you make a habit out of rest. Don't let it be a stranger. Analyze and consider why you are asking yourself, what's next? This goes for your relationships, romantic relationships as well. I'm also a divorcee. I say this again, but specifically for Black students, especially if you are descendants of slaves, Your worth is not measured by your production. White and white passing students, because yes, it looks different. How are you using your privilege to advocate for communities of color? This work doesn't end at Hampshire College. Do not leave that labor to fall on Black people. Semantics and identity politics, leftist, radical, progressive, liberal, woke, conservative, queer, trans, etc., will not free you. You have to consider the politic. Said another way, I have worked for very racist, queer people in liberal cities. Breathe, everybody. Everybody breathe. I know. Trust me, the experience is heavier than me telling you about it. You might not work in your field right away. You might not work in your field at all, and that's okay. Leave yourself alone. Your calling may call you. Wherever you land, maybe a botanist, archaeologist, visual artist, psychologist, doctor, plumber, server, a fucking modern cartographer. If you are not working to rid yourself and your field of white supremacist patriarchy, what was this all for? And this is for the entire room. Repeat after me. We are all anti-Black. That wasn't the whole room. I felt resistance in the back. I can see you. We are all anti-Black. Turn to your neighbor and say, how are you undoing yours? Everybody repeat after me as loud as Amherst, Massachusetts, all the way to Boston, all the way to New York City, all the way to Oakland, all the way to Ethiopia. I can hear you. We got work to do? One more time, we got work to do? And the work never ends. Thank you and congratulations.